My name is David Cooper. I'm a 35-year-old maintenance contractor based out of Pennsylvania. I mostly work on old buildings, churches, schools, the occasional historical site. I guess you could say I have a soft spot for structures with a past. But there's one job I did in 2019 that I haven't talked about. Not to anyone, not even my wife, because it haunts me. It started with a phone call from an old friend, Father Joseph Dempsey. He was one of those kind, salt-of-the-earth priests. We'd met years back when I renovated the bell tower at St. Agnes in Philadelphia. He asked me to take on a job at a rural convent upstate. The place was called the Sisters of the Veiled Heart, and he mentioned they were having structural issues. Crumbling foundation, warped floorboards, nothing unusual. But it was what he didn't say that stuck with me. His voice was strained, like he was choosing his words carefully. "There's been odd things, David," he'd said. "They hear things at night, cold spots. One of the sisters, well, she's not herself anymore." I thought he meant mental illness, a breakdown, something explainable. But after what I saw, I took the job because the money was good and the timeline was short. Just 3 weeks. I packed my tools, said goodbye to my wife, and drove upstate to a place that barely existed on a map. The convent was secluded, way off in the hills, surrounded by dying trees and creeping fog. As I pulled in, I saw the building. Old stone, Gothic architecture. It looked more like a castle than a convent. Perched, like it was daring the world to come closer. The front door creaked open before I even knocked. A nun stood in the doorway, dressed in full habit, her eyes completely in shadow. "You must be Mr. Cooper," she said. Her voice was soft, measured. "We've been expecting you." I nodded. "And you are?" She didn't answer, just stepped aside and let me in. The inside of the convent was even colder than outside. Not in temperature, atmosphere. The halls were too quiet, no humming, no chatter, just the sound of my boots echoing off stone walls. They gave me a small room at the end of a corridor near the old chapel. The place hadn't been used for services in years. I found that strange, considering it was a convent. The chapel doors were locked. When I asked why, the same nun, who I now knew as Sister Catherine, simply said, "We no longer worship there." The first 2 days were uneventful, just normal repairs. But on the third night, I heard something. It was around 2:30 a.m. I woke up to the sound of chanting. Low, guttural voices coming from behind the chapel door. At first I thought it might be prayer, but the tone? It wasn't holy. It sounded angry. Sounded like a threat. I grabbed my flashlight and crept toward the sound. The stone floor was cold through my socks. As I got closer, I realized something. The chanting wasn't in English. It wasn't Latin either. It was something else, something older. The moment I touched the chapel door, it stopped. Dead silence. I stood there for a few seconds, my heart hammering. Then I heard a whisper from behind me. "Help me." I spun around. No one. Just the empty hallway stretching into the dark. The next morning, I confronted Sister Catherine. "Look," I said, trying to sound casual, "I heard something last night from the chapel. Are there services happening that I should know about?" She stared at me for a long time, expression blank. Then she said something I'll never forget. "The chapel is sealed. If you heard something, it wasn't from within." That same afternoon, I met Sister Agnes. She was different, younger than the others, nervous. She kept glancing over her shoulder like something was watching her. I offered to fix the broken railing on the second-floor balcony. She hesitated, then said, "Don't stay up there too long. That's where Sister Mercy jumped." That name caught me off guard. "Jumped?" Sister Agnes nodded slowly. 6 months ago, we found her lying in the courtyard. Her face wasn't right. I asked if she had mental health issues. "No," she whispered. "She was pure, devoted. But something changed. She stopped speaking, would just stare at the chapel door for hours. One night, we heard her screaming. The next morning, she was gone. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing tapping sounds on my window even though I was on the second floor. At one point, I opened the curtain and saw a figure in a black habit standing in the courtyard, motionless, staring up at me. But when I blinked, it was gone. The next day, things escalated. I was working in the basement when the lights went out. Complete blackness. My flashlight flickered on, but it barely helped. The air felt thicker, almost wet, like being underwater. Then I saw something move across the far wall. Just a flicker, a shadow, shaped like a person, but too tall, too thin. I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" No answer. But then, footsteps, running footsteps, coming toward me. I backed into the corner, hammer raised, but no one came. Just silence again. I got the hell out of that basement. Later that evening, I found Sister Agnes crying in the hallway. Her hands were covered in scratch marks, deep red gashes like claw marks. "She won't leave me alone," she sobbed. "Who?" She didn't answer, just looked at the chapel. On the fifth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was behind the chapel door. I waited until after midnight when the halls were quiet. Then I took my drill and removed the hinges. The door groaned open. The air inside was foul, like rot and incense. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness. The pews were all overturned. The altar had been desecrated, covered in black wax, ash, and dried blood. But what I remember most was the crucifix. It was upside down, and the statue of Christ had no eyes. Then I heard it again, the chanting, coming from the far end of the chapel. I moved slowly, my boots crunching over broken glass. And then I saw her, a nun kneeling in the darkness, head bowed. Her hands were twitching violently like a marionette being pulled by invisible strings. I stepped closer. "Sister?" Her head snapped up. Her eyes were completely white, no pupils, just milky, dead orbs. Her mouth opened and let out a scream that sounded like it came from 100 voices. I ran. I tried to leave the next morning, pack my bag and got in my truck, but it wouldn't start. The engine was dead. No signal on my phone either. When I went back inside, Sister Catherine was waiting in the hallway. "You should not have entered the chapel," she said. I demanded answers. She didn't blink. "There was once a woman here," she said, "long ago, before this place was a convent, a healer. The villagers thought she was a witch. They burned her alive on this land. She cursed them with her dying breath. According to her, the spirit had never left. It lashed on to the faithful, the devoted. It waited for belief so it could corrupt it." "Sister Mercy," I said. "She was the first," Catherine nodded, "but not the last." And then she said something that chilled me to my core. "She's in me now." I tried to run, but Sister Catherine was fast, unnaturally fast. She moved like a spider skittering down the hall after me. I slammed the door to my room and barricaded it. All night I heard scratching, whispering, scraping along the walls. But when the sun rose, silence. I escaped that morning. My truck started like nothing had happened. When I got back to civilization, I told Father Dempsey everything. He nodded quietly, then said, "I tried to warn you. The Vatican has records. That convent was shut down in the 50s. No one was supposed to reopen it." I asked, "Then who are the nuns there now?" He looked me in the eye. "They're not nuns.